event, which was Reorienting Taste. I suppose food was the continuing thread for both of these events, but otherwise these are from very different projects. You will see some overlap of the people who are here, both in the audience and on this side, but the two events are not really connected in any way. So this one, let me give you a bit of background. The university has asked its faculty some time ago, sorry, what was that sound that just, yeah. The university asked its faculty some time ago to apply for a challenge grant that would help address issues of urban living, climate change, public health, in relation to whatever field or area or domain of inquiry they were coming from. I head the Center for Inter-Asian Research, and there are many, many kinds of projects that the fellows in my center have taken up. None of us are really experts in this area of climate change or public health, but we felt it could be interesting to pick out something that are core industries in Ahmedabad, which is, the host city of this project, and see whether we can think of connecting these to these larger issues. So we put up a proposal saying we'd like to look at food, clothing, and housing, and which we would, of course, I don't want to say it in Hindi because you know what I'm talking about. We thought that these are indeed the core industries in Ahmedabad, historically have been very, very important for the city. And we thought that then we could pose these questions about the larger, issues that seem to be plaguing us as a human race to issues coming out of food, clothing, and housing. The way we decided to put this forward is to say that, so the people at my center or me, we are not the experts. The students who are with us are also not the experts. But we have access to some of the best people thinking about these questions. And we thought we could create a dialogue between them and you, them and the students. And that's the purpose of this, how the project will pan out eventually. We have lined up 3 labs. We hope you will come to all of them. This is the first one, the food lab. We have a clothing lab in early November, and we have a housing lab in early February. And when all of these are done, we will try to put together some form of accessible material. We are even thinking of maybe a graphic novel, which will try to show what these interconnections are and how they might be, how they might be used in, at the school level, at the college level, and even at the university level. So yes, welcome to the food lab. What we have done is that yesterday we had a number of people, a couple of them are not here, representing the areas of climate change and health, but also representing the restaurant sector, people who think about nutrition, people who think about urban farming, people who look at food safety and sustainability, and I'm probably missing out on someone, but someone who does composting and zero waste. We are missing her, but we hope she will come a little later. And we had an entire day's discussion, completely in-house, from 10 in the morning till 5:30 in the evening, where we asked each other questions and elaborated the answers. So what you're going to hear today is a condensed version of that 8-hour-long discussion. We've culled out some questions that were the most, had the most animated discussion, and we are going to, the students here, there are 4 students here who will introduce themselves. They will present or pose the questions to the experts, who will then speak to the audience. We'll do that for about an hour, and after that there will be time for you all to ask your own questions of the experts. I'm very happy to have with me here Purvi Vyas, the lady in red, who is the anchor of the food lab. Purvi is an organic farmer. She's also a teacher of politics of food and many other crucial issues around food. And I just want to say here that without her, this would not have happened. So I'm very, very grateful that she was available to join this project and hopefully has made many new friends and will keep coming back to Ahmedabad University as well. I just want to flag 2 things. When I wrote up the proposal for these 3 labs, I tried to point to the contradiction between human desire, human expectations, human aspiration, and what we are desiring, which could actually end up by destroying us. So that particular sort of, the the dilemma that we face, that what we desire will destroy us. I think this is something very central to, the issues that we are trying to pose today. And I would like you all to maybe pick up the threads of this at some point. The other comment I wanted to make was that it came up in the discussion yesterday. Very often issues of livelihood get pitched against issues of sustainability. That if you want certain kinds of sustainable living, then maybe large numbers of people might actually lose their livelihood because they're employed in many industries that are perhaps not contributing to a sustainable life. This is something, again, I think is a key contradiction. I think that we will discuss whether it's a contradiction or not, and I think that the people here will have lots of interesting things to say about that as well. So having said that, let me welcome you all again and hand over to Purvi.
Thank you all very much for joining us today. We had a wonderful discussions with our panelists yesterday, and we realized that food is so much more than just something that we eat. Food is culture, food is religion, food is mood, convenience, love, and within that realm, what we realized is that the food that we choose to eat has an impact not only on our health, but health of the society and the environment. And within the light of climate change, the food choices that we are going to make are going to have an impact on the climate. And also the change in the climate is going to have an impact on the food choices that we shall be able to make. A lot of us in the urban context have lost our connection with food. We don't know where it comes from. We don't know who grows it, what's been done to it. And so we have a distinct panelist. They're all practitioners in the food system, from the farm to the fork, back to the soil. Some of them are involved in public health and policy influences. And our conversation with them was about what does sustainability mean for them in their practices, and what would sustainability look like through the lenses of food. And also, what are the learnings that we can take from the past for a sustainable future. And, we built our conversation around that. And we're hoping to bring out more of that conversation through interaction today. So thank you very much. And we hope you enjoy yourselves and have lots of questions to ask of all of us. Yes? If I may request all of you to introduce yourselves briefly. And then we can ask you questions.
Maybe starting with the students.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Aditi Mahata. I'm a fourth-year student majoring in social and political sciences.
Yeah. Good evening. My name is Isha Iyer. I'm a fourth-year student majoring in psychology, and I'm also pursuing a minor in environment and sustainability.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Veena Iyer. I'm an Associate Professor of Public Health at Indian Institute of Public Health, Gandhinagar.
Good evening. I'm Navanita Bajaj, and I'm from Edible Roots, and I help people grow their own food.
I'm Sejal. I work with a feminist collective called Anandi, and I've been an integral part of the Right to Food campaign and the Mahila Kisan Adhikar Manch.
I'm Anumitra. I am a chef, but I also try to, through our restaurant and edible archives, we try to also create a consumer awareness around food.
Hi, I'm Shalini. I'm also part of Edible Archives. I do a lot of the research and storytelling about where our food comes from and who grows it.
Hello everyone, I'm Kanika. I'm a fourth-year undergraduate student majoring in social and political sciences.
Good evening everyone. I'm Sridarshini. I'm a third-year student pursuing masters in life sciences.
I've already introduced myself.
So the first question is for Sejal ma'am. So being a founding member of Maqam and having worked with marginalized women, especially Dalit and okay, just turn it off. So, being a founding member of Makam and having worked with marginalized women, especially Dalit and tribal farmers, how would you think of food security as a significant political issue?
I think food is a political issue globally and for all development. For India, when we became sovereign, every country wants to first be self-sufficient. Otherwise, it creates a vulnerability and it makes you very, very insecure. This is the same that happens at the household level. Culturally, we understand that we don't admit to hunger. No household says that there is a prevalence of hunger because that would really assault dignity. So in this entire matter of looking at the scale of hunger, India is a global giant, fifth economy, and we have 101 out of 121 on the Global Hunger Index. On many counts, Gujarat is extremely food insecure. What does it mean? That there's a very high prevalence of hunger in this state. There's a very large number of working poor, and these, of course, show up in data all the time. But this is not the data that we see every day or acknowledge every day. We have 40% children nearly who are stunted growth. That means there's chronic hunger over a period of time. There's 30% of women who have BMI under 18.5, they are thin. There's also the double burden of hunger which can show up in obesity. You're having empty calories but not nutrition. Is this a political issue? It's political issue because it concerns livelihoods. The agriculture sector absorbs 60% of people, of which 75% of all rural women workers are in agriculture. And these are the ones who are the most malnourished, who are the most hungry. So both at a societal level, if we are talking, or as a country level, do we need to take decisions to look at public resources, investments, and where are these decisions taken? Then they have to obviously go to one of the basic needs. If you're looking at food, clothing, and housing, food is essential for survival, and it took a long battle. India has probably had the longest running mandamus in the world, starting from 2001 to 2014, on the right to food, to establish it as a right. And that's how you see this now, a recognition that to which many, the Guli Bens and the Kanak Bens and the Binori Didis are involved in this struggle to establish why should food be on the political landscape, what do we need to do to turn it from charity into dignity, why do we need to make it a right, and therefore there is a universal public distribution system that people are demanding. Today the state recognizes that 75% of the people in this country in rural areas who are the producers of food are food insecure and therefore need support. Often this support is seen as a form of subsidy, and I think it's so strange to see that when you are investing in our own labor capital, to realize food is basically for people to reach their potential, to live a healthy life, to be able to work. We are not seeing this as an investment. If 40% of your kids are stunted growth, then it is physical and mental stunting. So for me, if food is not political, then what should be political and what should we be discussing in this country? So for me, hunger and the prevalence is one side, and the large prevalence of it. The other big thing of why we make it political as Mahila Kisan Adhikar Manch, 82% of the farmers in this country are small and marginal farmers. And our friend Nabanita will tell you how people should grow food on their balconies, on small pieces of land. And yet, in our food sovereignty debate, we are not being able to see these farms as being able to produce enough to feed them. 70% of the work on these farms is done by women. And yet when you think of a farmer, you only think of a moochwala, turbanwala man. You only see the crop that is growing wheat and rice, which is a major cereal production. But you don't see what actually comes into the thali for a nutritious combined meal, which will be the backyard poultry eggs, that will be a lot of gathering, tubers, forest foods, food gathered from farms, livestock. So there is a whole lot of food system which actually enables millions of rural women to feed their family. It is not only their labor, it's also their skills. And yet, if you don't recognize them as farmers, because they don't have land in their name, only 13.8 are operational landholders, then essentially you cannot direct any investment in them. They have no seat at the table to decide what kind of agriculture needs to be practiced, what kind of investments are needed, what lands need to be protected, where should water be first utilized, what is the purpose of forest. And this at the household level, and Navli will have to argue with her husband. Navli Ben is trying to move to agroecological practice, not saying let's not use urea, which we don't do for our house. Most of the homestead farming is done by women, apart from also agriculture, labor and other work. But at that level also, Navli's husband, who's I don't know what, some lower rank infantry posted in the army, doing something very important on the border, but he will call up and dictate on what should be sown in the farm. And she says, no, I want to practice this practice I have learned on vermicompost. He said, you can't do it, we have to do cotton. And she said, no, you're too far away, I need to produce for my household, and this is how I want to produce food that I'm going to consume. So safe foods, we can take it. That is what will concern urban audiences. We are looking at from BT to food prices. These are things that affect urban audiences. But safe, nutritious food in the sustainable movement worldwide, we are now recognizing has to be local, diverse, where decisions and controls are being taken by the communities themselves on their resources and what they produce and eat. And the last part of the political debate, and I would want to bring it because we're in Gujarat, is food preferences. We decide as a country, food preferences are to do with, now intersect with religion, with caste, with what you can eat, what you can sell, who can eat what, when. And these are politically very, very powerful movements where you can prevent people from eating or consuming something. In Gujarat, one of the longest battles we've had is on two things. One is in what we should give to our children for nutritious food. Should we give them micronutrient fortified food? Should we give them easy paste? Should we give them what we should be, nutraceuticals? Or should we give them what can be locally produced as supplementary nutrition so that there's food knowledge and practice that goes in the house? Sukhdi has got no rocket science. For all the Gujaratis who know, it's energy dense food. I mean, there's another complicated way of saying it. You fortify it with micronutrients is basically if you put the tadka that we do everywhere, then you would have a good fortification of several things. And we have several vertical programs, vitamin A or iron folate if you're pregnant lactating and it falls. And yet in all our food, there's such a huge food fortification. And we're not talking about what is the quality of food I'm getting. Is the vegetable or the fruit I'm eating, is it nutritious or is it laden with pesticides? Those are not the questions that we are asking from the source of food, which Navli Ben was asking and fighting with her husband to decide. She's the one who's going to work on the farm all day. She's going to actually process and feed the family. But to have a seat, whether in the household or in the policy, on what needs to be supported to grow the food that I can eat, or what seeds are available, what water is available for me, what land is available for me. All these are very critical decisions, I think, both with growers and consumers. And that's why I think it's political. It's not simple. You don't eat what you decide. You eat actually what many other corporations decide for you.
So the next question was actually directed towards Pankti ma'am, but I think we can move on to Chef Anumitra. Like in today's time and space, we can see a lot of people who are dependent on food that is produced outside of their, yeah, in today's time and space, we can see a lot of people who are dependent on food outside of their homes. So what would you think should change in the discourse of public cooking? Like especially someone who works with indigenous ingredients, someone who works with indigenous rice, what do you think like eating out can actually change for better? How do you think it can change for better?
It's complicated, but I'll start with like I think we are also not very conscious now about what we are consuming. We never ask questions. We don't go to the shop and ask, okay, you are giving me this rice or this thing, so what is the name of the rice? Like I have asked people and they don't, like even the person who is selling it, sometimes they don't know what's the name of the rice. And the next level is that you go to the supermarket where there are all kinds of label, like, you know, there are, okay, this has, these are the, FSSI has come up with all new ideas that, you know, you have to put this, all these informations which are actually vacuous information, but you don't know actually what you are eating. That's our, my thing, that the, in my head, the first thing is that we have to start asking this question. It's your body, it's your life, you have to have that right to, you know, like think, because we are so busy with our work and other things, we never ask these questions. We are getting, like, we are going very far from our food. That's our like, you know, public cooking is like, you know, people who are cooking also, they are also public and they also don't ask the same question. So I'll start with everyone who like everybody should know that what they're eating. That's the first thing. Then of course that how, like, people who are in the industry, if people are more aware, then they will also have to be more responsible. I'll just tell you a little bit about the fortification of rice, what is happening, because I'll come back, like why each ingredient is important. So what is happening with the first layer of fortification of rice is going to happen like this, that you make the rice into powder, flour. Happened, I know. So that then you mix all another, like all these fortified with the chemicals into tablets. So they are tablets, so they also made into powder, and then you mix them, then you make pallet of rice. So this is the fortified rice that we are talking about, and it will change, like, you know, how the Tata Namak has taken the whole industry of salt. Like we tried, like in our we live in Goa, so we have the privilege to, you know, we buy very special salt from, like sea salt from Goa or Karnataka. There are various kinds of interesting salt. So this tiny bit of interest, I remember, like my father, my parents were not into food, like they had their jobs, they did everything, but they were curious, and they, like, that's why I know all these informations, that they were curious that, oh, we are eating this, we are like, we are Bengali, so we eat this hilsa every year, like during monsoon. But my father was very this thing, that in your life I want you to taste this rice from Bangladesh called balam, so I want you to have it with hilsa. So he used to sauce it and, you know, get it so that I taste it. So I'm saying that these are very small joys. We can, like, we can be curious and we can go into this small joy, not take it like a very serious thing that you have to pursue. I have to do it, you don't have to do that. So you can, like, be little curious. That's my, my thing is that that's the first step. Second step is definitely eating as much local as possible, and like also being curious about all the other like, you know, the diversity around you. Like, you know, sometimes we don't see, if you do, like, it's these things vanish from the market because we don't see it, and then we, like, first you don't see, then whatever is there, gradually, slowly it vanish from the market. So that's another thing, that if diversity is not there, so everybody, like, whoever is interested in cooking, I think this is the first step, everybody can be conscious. Then the second step is people who are little more curious, like Kanika, she can look at the diversity of things that, you know, which are available. and because that will be directly connected with the sustainability of the production and this thing around you. And then I think one major thing is that as an industry also, like if the demand is this, like definitely we also create demand, but also the demand also create people. So everywhere, you know, like I'll give very obvious example what I see in Ahmedabad. So everywhere I see this lot of you know, like pizza and burger is like lot of it is there, and the flour of that thing, I know that how the flour has changed and what flour is coming to the market. So like, you know, also food is about aspiration. I know that everybody wants to, but it can be balanced. Someday it can be, yes, you eat everything. You try pizza one day or burger one day, but also like the cheese that also now the butter I saw in Ahmedabad again, like it was like the quality of the butter, and even in the kitchen I send them, I am looking for Amul butter, simple Amul butter, but so many different kinds of this light, this double light, all these, like these are like what are you consuming if we don't look at it? And then the next step is that you look at it, okay, from a health point of view, and you think that, oh, this label is coming with healthy, so it's actually healthy. So that also need to be questioned. So this is one part of the thing that, and then how the public cooking, like, you know, the public cooking thing will change. Actually, if you see the whole of Southeast Asia, there are a lot of options. A lot of people eat out, but there are also a lot of options which are, you can eat every day and you can survive. Like you can get basic, so that kind of food should also be in the market, which is very, very less. And also another thing is that we are constantly discussing about climate change. So everybody should remember that, like, all this, like when the temperature, last few years where the heat, because of the heat wave, the temperature has gone up. But if you see, the aspiration of our food is going towards a side where the food is very, very heat generating. So if you are in Ahmedabad in a summer day and you are eating something loaded with cheese, and these are not cheese that, you know, like it's not good cheese. Like, I don't know how to say. It's processed in a certain way. Like, I also worked in Italy for a long time, and I have like worked in France. I'm not saying cheese is bad, but what I'm saying that, like, a mass-produced processed cheese in a like 40-degree afternoon outside. So I'm just saying that your body temperature, when it's like, anyway, it's because of climate change, we have to adapt. Now adapt also means that you have to be conscious that, you know, like, okay, I have to go more towards cooling food. It's not going to be this thing. So and also definitely I don't know, but not, the industry will not change suddenly, but if the consumers change and if they ask for it, the industry will change. Otherwise, they are like, our industry is operation oriented. So if they get a direction, then it's like they will go towards that direction, because they are concentrated and focusing only on operation. And so if the consumer also sometimes change, that can also have an effect on the industry. Anything?
So while Anumitra ma'am has shed light on how we should make more conscious choices and we should be curious and mindful of what we eat, our next question was about food production systems, and this is directed for Shalini ma'am. So in the current industrial food production system, is it possible to make changes that can mitigate the ill effects of climate change, and at what level can these changes be made?
So I think that I'm going to quibble a little bit about the phrasing, because the issue is not whether it's possible or not, it's that we have to make changes. All the climate change reports, all the data that's coming out right now is saying that things are maybe even a little bit worse than some of the projections had said. If we don't do some sort of course correction right now, then we can continue doing what we are doing and we will fall off the proverbial cliff. So is it possible or not? We have to make it possible one way or the other. I think the only question is how to make it possible. I think that there are some very basic things. I mean, if I were ruler of the world or whatever, I would do these kinds of things. But there are some very basic things that maybe even all of us should think about when we are making various choices, not only about what we are eating, but all kinds of choices. If we are saying that climate change is happening and the world is heating up, then it's really important to stop bringing more and more land into human use, whether it is agriculture, whether it is quote-unquote development, whether it is housing, whether it is whatever it is. So, because all of whatever land that is untouched or left as it is, all the land, whether we think of it as wasteland, we have a sense of thinking, okay, forests produce carbon, but especially living in Goa, we are constantly being told that, all this wetland, all this saline area is wasteland, and so it's fine, we can build on top of it. Actually, if you look at it, wetlands sequester more carbon than forests do. Similarly, grasslands sequester almost as much carbon as, full-fledged forests. So, in Gujarat, for example, I keep hearing from people who live here that, this used to be empty, people used to graze goats over here, but now there's some housing colony coming up or whatever it is. That is contributing to climate change. Maybe if you're buying a house, think about where it's being built, and is it breaking new ground or is it being built on something that is already being used as housing stock. Even at that level, I'm just saying that the consciousness has to pervade at some level to all parts of our lives. But certainly bringing in more and more untouched land for agricultural production doesn't make sense, because we have a lot of, even in the current industrial way of doing agriculture, and luckily in India we are in this very good space that it hasn't become a monoculture yet. It is well on its way to becoming a monoculture, but we haven't crossed that tipping point yet. As Sejal ji was saying, that the majority of farms are smallholders. They are small farms, subsistence level farming. All of this comes with not only negative connotations, some very, very positive connotations when it comes to biodiversity, when it comes to the multitude of items being grown, when it comes to ecosystems that are being fostered in each of these kinds of places. If you have a monoculture, you have enormous field of wheat or an enormous field of rice. Everything else in that is systematically being eradicated, whether it's an animal, whether it is a bird, whether it is an insect, whether it is other plants. If you have a small holding farm, you will have maybe a patch of rice. There will also be, hopefully, this is a little hopeful right now, but if you're not using too much pesticide, etc., there will be a small ecosystem in that patch of rice, because there will be insects in the water, there will be frogs, there will be, so on and so forth. You will have multiple things growing. You will have some greens growing that will attract, those will attract pollinators and other insects like worms and caterpillars. You will have some trees, you will have some fruit, you will have all sorts of things happening. Ideally, I know this is not the case everywhere, but it can happen. And so you can imagine a kind of a ecosystem or a series of ecosystems. In the US, there is a lot of emphasis among some communities to do what they call square foot gardening, literally 1 square foot by 1, 1 foot by 1 foot, but with the idea being that whatever you're growing there should host at least 4 or 5 types of other species, apart from what you're growing for your own food. So I think that it's important to realize that the only way to increase our production is not to bulldoze more and more, but to make better use of our resources. We discussed yesterday that a huge amount of food waste is there in the transportation chain, in the storage areas. Before it ever gets to your house or your plate, something like 25% of food is lost, if I remember correctly, just coming from the farm to the final consumer. If we were to put more effort into reducing that amount, our food production would go up without having to, bring in more climate change aggravating solutions, I guess, like growing things on more land. Similarly, I think that the second part of this question is about at what level should this change happen. I think it has to happen at every level, certainly individual levels, and there are ways as individuals we can think about this. When you are buying things, going and buying your vegetables from the local thelawala or whoever is a better option than going and buying it from a supermarket. The amount of, again, at every level, the amount of food that's being lost at storage or ordering from Swiggy or whatever it is, yes, is more. Similarly, buying, as Anumitra said, local, seasonal, also indigenous as much as possible. So the rice that is grown in Gujarat, there are some very nice rices grown in Gujarat that are available. Eat those and save the basmati for once in a while instead of always eating basmati every day unthinkingly. I mean, it's one thing if you love basmati so much and you only want to eat it, but that's not the case for most of us. It's just that's what's put in front of us, so we eat it. So at the individual level, at the community level, certainly again, like a lot of us have to make choices, not just for ourselves, but for all our families, extended families, all of these sorts of things, I think. And at the national level, which then becomes a political endeavor, and at the global level, whatever is happening. I don't know if we can all access that, but at least at these three levels, most of us have some say. And I think that it is quite possible. One final thing is the question that Dr. Niranjana brought up at the beginning about livelihoods versus sustainability. A lot of these options actually would lead to, ideally would lead to more livelihood, more options for livelihoods for many people, in the sense that industrial agriculture always moves towards mechanization as much as possible. If we think about some of this as you said, as skilled labor, as skills that we want passed down through the generations and to a larger section of society, as also as something that gives people a way to earn a living that can hope, ideally, again, this is very idealistic, but with dignity, then we can think about, livelihoods not having to always be at loggerheads with sustainability, but greater sustainable options leading to more options for livelihoods.
Yes, so practicing sustainability at an individual level and at an organizational level brings us to the next question, which is directed for Navneeta ma'am. So what does your company Edible Roots do, and how does your enterprise fit into the bigger picture of sustainability, and who can actually afford to practice this kind of sustainability?
For the first thing, what we do, we help people grow their own food, but how to sensitize the idea, how to motivate people and inspire people. What we do, first thing is talk. Just like everyone is saying, you have to talk about the problem. If you don't talk about the problem, you will never get to the solution. The thing is, we don't ask questions. So what we do, as a company, organization, we help people, but the first thing, we bring people to our farm. We have a farm. It's a demonstration farm. It's actual farm, and we call them and we talk. Nobody will, whenever anything any conversation start with food. So if we talk to them, ki what you do, we help people grow their own food. So that creates curiosity. Then we invite them for a talk. Let's talk about the why. If you don't talk about the why, you will never want to know how and what. We do workshops, like the question was how do we sensitize it? We talk about it. The why, always ask the question why. Just like Anumitra said, if you are buying something, you ask what is this? Then why? Why to grow your own food? When you ask these questions to ourselves, we know, okay, why? Because you are helping something. You are minimizing something like food waste. If you are growing your own food, you will know the season. At least if you talk about it, you will know the season. Just like Anumitra said, ki if we don't know what grows in what season, we do not have that awareness. Everything is available in the market 12 months. We have to know the why. Okay, this is the season. This is what grows in summer, in winter. Then we will be more mindful and conscious as a consumer. Just like Mitra also mentioned this, that you have to control the demand. Demand and supply is there. If we can't keep blaming the farmers, okay, why you are putting pesticide, farmers are putting pesticide, what you are doing to minimize it? You are doing nothing. You don't even ask the questions. So we ask the question, would you like to know where your food is, how your food has been grown? That first question brings curiosity. Okay, we'd like to know how our food is grown. So that's what we do. We talk about the food, questions themselves, do you know where your food is coming from, who is growing it, and how it has been grown. Then if they want to know, we give them a farm tour, and they see the vegetables growing organically, naturally, without any inputs, with the natural resources we have. We take care of the soil. Then we talk about the how. We help them how to grow it at home. Even if you grow one pot of spinach or coriander, you will try to observe and you realize the season. Oh, why my spinach plant is it's drooping. Otherwise you come out of the house, you sit in an AC car, you come to your office, you sit in your AC office, and you never realize something is changing. Every season is changing. When we make a planting calendar for Delhi, we are based in Delhi, every season is changing. The observation is the key. First ask questions, then observe around it. That's what the skill we are losing. We don't observe anything, what is happening around us. If you're growing, many people ask me, okay, what if I am growing one tomato plant or spinach, how does it help in climate change or minimizing waste? Because so many things are happening. You were observing the weather. Oh, I have to put more water because today is more hot. But last time I was growing spinach and it was not that hot and I didn't have to put water twice. So that means your weather is changing. You have to do something about it. So then you will have that sense that you have to do something in helpful direction. So what we do first talk, then we teach the how, and we arrange farm tour, and we arrange food event. We grow a lot of native plants. In Delhi, again the demand and supply is there. Everywhere, all round the year, you will see spinach. Like in summer, you don't eat spinach. It's create heat. So people, because they see in the market it's available, they buy. So that's the thing. If it's available, we'll buy. If it's not available, we'll ask question. And if we are conscious consumer, then the farmers will also know that this has no demand in this season. Don't put pesticide. And because something is growing off season, you are spraying something to let it survive. Then you are putting pesticide to let it go to the market and for the shelf life. Then you are coming to our plate. So many pesticide is there because they are putting so much effort, because we are as a consumer demanding something that is not in season. So everything is a ripple effect. If you see, you will know the season. So through food events, we grow different native varieties of food. Like other than spinach, there are a lot of other spinach. Not related to spinach, but they're called water spinach, Malabar spinach, poi shag, we call it. Then other varieties of green. I'm from Assam, and in Assam there are lots of varieties of green. You can just forage, and you don't have to, here we have to grow water spinach, but there in the water body, near the pond, everywhere water spinach is growing. So those things we try to bring in Delhi, and that in our community farm we try to grow, and through those food events we, make them eat. Try this, and they like it. Oh, this is better, and this greens we like. Can we grow it? Then we come to the why. How part. Okay, if I want to grow and I want to eat it in summer, instead of spinach, I can get these 3 varieties of greens, and then they go and do the research. Self-research is also, we constantly have to, keep learning. That we just stop. So through food event, we try to make them conscious about what they are eating and what they can do. Because if you don't experience it, you will never going to try. First they eat, oh, it's good. Same thing with the farm tour, all the people come and they see, oh, these are the saplings, these are the seeds. We show them a closed loop system, from seed to harvest to composting. So we do such session like you sow the seeds, then the second stage of the seedling, how you care for it, then the actual harvesting, then after you eat, you do the composting. So that's how they can see the whole system, that what you are eating, you are taking up nutrients, you are giving it back to the nature. So it's regenerative. So then people think, okay, if we grow from edible roots, you don't have to keep buying the fertilizer. You can manage your waste, turn into compost, and use it. So that's again has a ripple effect, because we are not sending the biodegradable to the landfill. So you are doing something in helpful direction. Every time you cannot change anything overnight, but little by little you are doing something. So when like people come to us now, when at individual level we teach them, their house helps see, their drivers see them, these are the way you can make compost, and those people going back to the village and trying. In Assam, since my childhood, I have never seen any kurawala like Delhi. We always have a compost pit, we always segregate. So that's the thing, if these generation parents, they don't see the value in preserving the soil, they will not teach their kid. So first you have to understand the value to preserve it. That's why I say, come visit our farm and we will talk about it. Just talk, If you value it, then you'll preserve it. So it's not like, oh, this only if you have the money you can practice it. Like you can say, your question was like, who can practice sustainability? Everyone can. Like from all income group, you can. Just by, I visit a lot of farmhouses. When people call us to set up a kitchen garden or food garden here, then I see the Mali, they are having tea and they are leaving the pipe which they are watering the tree. They're leaving it and they said, okay, I'll finish my tea and let the water flow. It's overflowing. So that's the mindset you need to change. Just because it's a natural resources, then the wastage they are not valuing. You will finish the tea. Just at individual level, it doesn't cost money. If you carry a bag to buy your vegetables, I think till 10 years back, in Assam also we used to carry bag. Now I can see everywhere this single-use plastic. And everything, why do you have to ban it? Why can't we try at individual level? If government will say, don't use this, then only we don't use this, or we have to think again, ask question, what you are doing. Just stop for a while and ponder over it, what we are doing. You have to carry a bag. You can just switch on the tap while you're brushing. Nobody realize they are brushing and looking at Instagram and your tap is running. You just switch off your tap and you carry your bag, some bottle of water, and this can, And we walked with the slum areas also. We teach them how to grow. Because a lot of these people came from, actually they are from the villages, doing some odd jobs in the city, but they have something, some recycle crate, something, some container. We teach them that you grow at least some nutritious food. Because according to research, the vegetables, they lose 50% of the nutrients after you harvest it. So 50% got lost in 24 hours, and it's transporting to you, then you keep in the freeze. So I always encourage at least grow some of the food, because it will, change your mindset, and that will happen at community level. Yeah, yes. Yeah, I'm done. Yeah, I'm done. I hope you got your answers.
Thank you, ma'am, for enlightening us and explaining us about the importance of growing one's own food. So moving on, Dr. Veena, this is directed towards you. Okay. So Dr. Veena, this question is directed for you. So in the discipline of public health, what are the key challenges you face today? Are any of them aggravated by food choices, food access and climate change?
Yes, so when I was faced with your question, and I thought about it, and I felt the best thing would be to just go to the basics, to look at the definition. So yes, so how do we define public health? And public health is considered as the art and science of promoting health, preventing disease and prolonging life through organized efforts of society. So in that sense, organized efforts of society is something Tejaswini ma'am has done so gracefully with all of us. And in terms of public health and nutrition, you talked about food access and food choices, right? Yes, and as we had talked yesterday, among the topmost causes of disease burden for Gujarat, we saw were cardiovascular diseases, and then comes maternal and neonatal diseases. So clearly we all know how cardiovascular diseases clearly linked to nutrition, and so too maternal and neonatal diseases. They say stunting actually begins in utero, So it's very, very much the heart of public health, no doubt about it. And of course, food access and food choices is going to affect our disease burden for sure. So your second part of your question was something about what are the challenges we face, and in light of climate change, right? So no doubt, I think most of us here clearly understand how climate change would be affecting nutrition itself. But in terms of, say, so in terms of food choices, which was brought in by Pankti yesterday, so how she talked about her work to move people towards millets was strongly that I got from her. And then food access is what I am getting clearly from Nobunita, that growing your own food and making it. So to me, when it comes to public health, I would say that we should actually be looking at it in terms of smaller communities, maybe say Ahmedabad, and what is where are we on the spectrum of climate change? Where is Ahmedabad, if we can calculate it? And then we would think in terms of these two interventions. I can see Nobunita's intervention and Pankti's intervention as things that we can work with and maybe understand how we could bring it to scale if possible. So and maybe it would become more attractive to funders also, to your people also, if you're able to more clearly calculate the value that you will get out of having such interventions at scale. So that is where the public health challenge is. The public health challenge is to do these calculations, to connect it with to connect it with physical health of people, to connect it with their mental health, to connect it with their social being. So how do we make this equitable? How do we make it how do we help people to relate with the value of it in terms of their own health, and then in terms of how your own city will be sustainable maybe 20 years later, 30 years later. How will we deal as a people? How will we be more successful in dealing with our nutrition when we have heat waves, when we have floods? So I think that, challenge, it's not impossible, it's something we can do, but again, it's organized efforts of society. We come together and we should be able to do it. Yeah.
I think we are missing a couple of people, but maybe what they discussed with us yesterday we'll be able to bring up when the general discussion takes place. So I think we can now open it up to all of you who've come and stayed. Please feel free to raise your hand. We will just pass you the microphone. You can ask a question to any individual or just to the group in general.
I had a couple of questions. The first one was, like in terms of the food as a sector in cities, like how do informal food, how does the informal food, like a lot of us, most of us eat on the street vendors, like the streets. So my first question was, of course, the street food is definitely not healthy, like the butter, everything. So, but it's still cheaper than going to restaurants. So, how does a street vendor, how does a thelawala, how does he practice sustainability, or how does he practice, healthy food eatings, and how does he practice healthy food? That was my first question. My second question was related to housing as a sector. And like 20 years ago, like we wanted to buy a house and we chose satellites. At that time, satellite was full of greenery, like there was kind of a forest there. Right now, but right now it has become fully urbanized. But at that time, satellite had cheap land rates, so it was at least affordable to buy. So for me, the larger question is affordability of housing. Like sure, peri-urban areas and areas which are the commons, which are pastures. Houses should not be built there, or we should not stay there. But at that time, at the same time, there's a question of affordability. People want to buy houses. It's affordable in those areas. So how does the affordability aspect come in? And my last question was related to planning. Like I just recently saw that Bangalore, it rained, and some of the examples or some of the reasons that were given was it was built on like 4 different valleys and all of these things. And I understood that there is some problem with the planning, but at the same time, urbanization is happening at such a fast rate. Like every year there is this whole new class of burgeoning upper middle class or middle class that is being formed in a city. And so it is, even the government, like every year they have to think of new areas to develop. There are these institutions, there are like 5 or 6 different institutions in charge of urbanization. There's the water resources department, there's the drainage department, there's X, Y, Z. How does, like in such a short time when urbanization is happening at such a rapid rate, how does a city planner or city think of those things? And at the same time, while the city is developing outside, what happens to the internal city? Like for example, in Ahmedabad.
Can I interrupt you? We
Yeah.
are food panel here.
But
We're not so much urban planning or city planning. We are more about food sustainability. We are the food lab.
Yeah, but we talked about housing, so that's what.
We haven't talked about housing. We mentioned, an example. But from the panel that we have here today,
Okay,
we are
but
experts in sustainability through the lenses of food, not so much urban planning.
So then the street.
I think Shalini, you can answer the question.
I was just trying to say that this will be more helpful in the housing lab, but I can just say one thing about planning, which is that from a food perspective, if we look at some of the other cities, right now I feel that there's a lot of just pretty much unregulated, unplanned growth in most of our urban areas. But if we look at cities that have been planned, or parts of our cities that have been planned, you'll see that there is provision for parks, for trees, for sidewalk trees. In Delhi, for example, when they laid out Lutyens Delhi, each major arterial road had a different fruit tree. So when I was growing up there, I didn't need to look at road signs. I could look up at the tree and say, okay, this is an Imli tree, I must be on Akbar Road. It's, whatever it is. So certainly there are ways in which we can also think about food plans, whether it's growing, whether it is transport, whether it is storage, whatever, how food works in a well-planned city. And that's another reason to plan your city, but I can't address your question about affordability of housing. I don't know where to start, honestly. You want to talk about
the first question? It's difficult, again, because, like, how can I tell that, a person who is, say, a person who is making the food, they are constantly in the mercy of you guys, that, like, they have the demand, that's why they are making it. So if everyone should start, like, somewhere, like, being conscious, like, I can understand you have to eat street food, but you can cook also once or twice, like, you can make, I used to, it's cheaper to cook. I used to do, when I was a student, I used to, like, do massive cooking classes for my friends, especially for boys, so that, so that, like, basic things. And then as you eat good food, you will have resistance for not having, like, so much bad food. And then you can also tell them, it's not that they are also not doing it because they love it. This is because they have no other, like, they have to survive. This is their profession. So if you give them a good choice and tell them and make them interested, they will do it. We used to do that when we were student, like, tell them that try this, and they will do it. But first you have to be like, people have to be more aware of that good food exists. And
I think it's a lot to do with change in ideas of what is good food. I live in a rural area, and yes, I live in a rural area, and when I moved there, the idea of eating at a thela was bhajia. I don't know if you understand bhajia. So it was bhajia. In the last few years, it was pav bhaji, and now it is Chinese food everywhere. And so a role of media and what is aspirational food, as Anumitra was saying. So in some sense, we as consumers also play a role. And so if we demand a certain kind of food from them, as she said, have a conversation and have demand. So it becomes like a vicious circle. There's a demand for cheap food and fast food, and therefore, they cater to that demand, and then, that tends to be unhealthy. So I think the onus is on both sides. Demanding a certain kind of food and expecting them to deliver. And also the fact that thela wala food is 100% not healthy. I mean, if you are living in Ahmedabad and if you have a vada pav thela wala and it's 45 degrees in, summer, you don't have a place for storage, he's going to boil fresh potatoes every day. In some ways, whereas in McDonald's, the patty's been made somewhere, applied hundreds of chemicals. The idea of hygiene is different there. So I think that is also very important for us to understand that, the Western idea of hygiene and corporations selling you the idea of hygiene and us assuming a thela wala is 100% not healthy is also not appropriate, I feel.
I just want to tell you, like, little bit about what happens with hygiene. Like, in last few years, the FSSI has come up with all the hygiene norms. So as a chef, we all had to do a course on that as the new rule came. And so then we figured out that even the FSSI, what they have done, that they have copied a hygiene rule from the US, this thing. So it's like, it's very vague that, what is hygiene, like, so that became the parameter for hygiene in restaurant industry. So, hygiene is a very, like, we have to again redefine.
And also what happens with accepting USDA rules is that a lot of small thelawalas go out of business because they are not going to be able to cater to those standards. So we also have to keep in mind the social context of our country.
I want to take this on also, because I think the larger question, I think we're really looking at as if we are making these choices. It's not USDA rules that have been taken. There is a lobby that is pushing on what standards, so there is a greater industrialization of food. On this experience, I was talking about sukhdi, which is a common food that most people make. हर आंगनवाड़ी में इस देश के 14 लाख आंगनवाड़ी में गाँव में you were supposed to cook this ready cooked meal and feed to children. Then this is a long battle that went in Supreme Court for 8 years. That's why I am so familiar with the intricacies of it. And we see one strange note from one Undersecretary, Food and Nutrition Department, that this Anganwadi food may be dangerous to children, so you should have untouched by hand micronutrient extruded soya bean. Why soya bean? Because soya bean is not native to us. Chana is native, moong is native somewhere. You have to do pulse, protein and calorie ratio. That's what's prescribed. To do that, what was it? There were like 4 contractors in this country. Ponti Chaddas, Om Agarwals, I will name the, guys. 25,000 crore supplementary nutrition market in a public food program. And all we thought was, in every Anganwadi, there's a worker, there's a cook, you're trying to teach supplementary nutrition from the local ingredients that the mothers can continue, parents can continue, complementary feeding, because there is a lack of availability. Huge burden of malnutrition comes from that first 1,000 days of eating complementary food. There's a public health issue which we have to deal with. This went on in Supreme Court. Gujarat was ordered that you can't do this because we were importing gehu from Punjab. We were sending it to Rajasthan, where it was getting pesoed with 90% gehu, 10% of moongfali, which is Gujarat native, sugar, dal, put in packets of pre-mixed sukhdi and coming back to Gujarat and being distributed across the state. Was that sukhdi quality? Could you monitor it? Is it easier for a person to monitor raw cooked food? I know that Thelawala is frying the bhajia in front of me. वो आलू डाल रहा है कि क्या डाल रहा है? To some level I have a control. I have no control on what's going into the McDonald's patty. So this idea, this very simple idea we have that it's a non-political issue. There are what seeds you will get, what food you will eat, what food will go into public program. 11-year battle with the Supreme Court constantly ruled that yes, it should be cooked locally. Your midday meal should be cooked in the school, so that teachers supervising, parents are supervising, it's fresh, you serve it there. It's under the kitchen in the community. But we are letting in every food larger policy, from production to consumption, we have started to rely more on this industrialized package, untouched by hand, all in the idea of making it safe. So it became unsafe because at the root, what was the problem? Where was it coming from? Where was the dumping happening? US dumped lal wheat gluten, which came into our public distribution system. Immediately people shouted, ये गेहूँ बहुत खराब क्वालिटी का आया. सरकार ने बोला हम fortified आटा देंगे. We found records which have gone on the public कि this grain has been rejected on Kandla port, that it is not edible. But it came into then it got fortified because atta you can't challenge. And all the women, the commonest women were telling the Chief Vigilance Commissioner who came that, boss, while atta is convenient, I'd like atta, I don't know what goes in the atta. At least on the grain that I get from the PDS, I know what is the quality of grain. We have a tradition of cleaning it and getting it cleared. So on many things, I think in the food debate, the closer, the more local, the more community control, the more household control you have, then you have to get to the raws. You have to get to less and less processed food for communities to be able to control the source. The fancy, shining Washington apple that we're eating, which is coming over 3 months, waxed. What nutrition content it has, we don't know. But in the free market, you can't stop. No? There are like larger trade issues. But dumping of food is a major problem. And that's how we have fought long battles in the food industry. So for me, this global, we don't know, is not something that we can avoid. All of us need to know which WTO treaty we are arguing, what is protecting our farmers, what is protecting our land and water. These are very intimately connected to what we will get to eat and choose.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very important, very important.
Hi, so good evening everyone, and thank you for the inputs. My question is to you, ma'am. So recently I've come across this term called ugly food. Ugly food, right? So, and one set of data points talks about the fact that because the variety of the yield and the quantity of ugly food percentage tends to be relatively higher, and therefore they don't end up getting into the retail space. So do restaurants actually use the ugly food, or is it completely a bit of a waste?
Restaurants have different scales, no? So, a canteen might use, because they will not, depends on how, what is your budget, and also what do you think, like, in my restaurant, I definitely use all kinds of things, because we believe we grow our things, and it can come in any size and shape. And, but definitely, like, as you go more, more like hotels, they don't generally, they will not like use. And the main thing also happens with now most of the students of from catering college, they all go to hotels and for their like internship. So they also learn those things. So they also like, so in when say you have an onion, so I whoever joined me, I tell that the first thing is that if you don't waste, remember that you will be close to me in 3 months, 4 months. If you waste things, like even in chopping, cutting, so I'm just like for a lot of these people who are going to those places, because that's the only place they now go to, and so they also get to learn those things. So there is definitely that comes. So as you become professional, you don't use those things. There is that kind of thing happens.
Yeah, and present also, because what being present, because what is media's role? To remind us, to influence us, and to give information. The role of media and advertising is there, but what is shiny, good looking, perfect is good. So that influence creates a desire. Everyone is buying that nice shiny looking, why I'm getting this less good looking tomato. But that's why this, at individual level, the consciousness should be there. That's why we tell them to eat this, and you know. It's in nature. Again, the industry, like Sridharji said, food industry is there somewhere. Either deciding with the media, everyone is controlling something that media is presenting. This is good. This is the standard of good food. Nice, shining good. That's why the ugly food term is coming up now. Also, it's a very Western concept, right? Ugly food in India, if you look, we have so many different levels. So the concept of ugly food is basically supermarket standard. What does it mean, a supermarket standard? And therefore, because they throw it away, they call it ugly food. Whereas in India, we have many levels of the market through which food goes through.
And so the kind of food you and Anumitra are talking about is the top level. A lot of the farmers will, there's a term in agriculture called cream. So you pick up which is not going to meet the standards. Again, this is also a root cause of contract farming, right? Because contract farming has a lot of norms of what is acceptable produce, size, shape, color, weight, etc. Right? So again, as Sejalben was saying, these are all connected to corporatization, industrialization of food, and not so much looking at how nature produces food. Because in nature there is no symmetry when it comes to, there will be big, small, round, twisted. So, we're stepping away from nature.
Also, as you get familiar, as you make these terms very, mainstream, then also what happens that you only see that it's ugly or it's good. But you don't know that it's a good fruit, like how do you choose the vegetable?
I was just going to say, So this is a major change that has happened in I think consumption of food in, let's say, public spaces, like through restaurants and so on, not maybe at the home level, but so many of us, if you look at, say, recipe books or something from earlier, the focus, they were printed without photos, and the focus would always be that it should smell like this, it should taste like this, etc. Now everything comes with a glossy photo. All the TV shows, all the Instagrams, all the reels, whatever it is, the TikTok things. So you're actually, a lot of the time, you're choosing, you're thinking about your food from a visual perspective long before you ever think about what you'll actually eat. And that does make an impact. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah,
We're looking
yeah.
at the aesthetics, not the nutrition. We're forgetting the nutrition value.
The nutrient density is higher.
So, yeah, and also just like you said, how it smells. Yeah. Or how it smells, or what is the texture. So, yeah, like when you go to a fruit wala and you pick up a mango and smell it, now people give you funny looks. But that's, how else are you going to decide? Not by how it looks. Yeah.
I had one little question there, is that in the dairy industry, we've been able to have the cooperative model, which is kind of popularized by Amul. Somehow, if you look at the farming sector, there's not much that has happened in the cooperative sector. Politically, if we really look at it, could have, it's just a debate which one can look at. Would it have helped the farmers, or can that be looked at?
I certainly think it's the largest population that's growing in livestock. Fishing also we have not been successful as much. Poultry somewhere now we have been seeing now with the small self-help groups, producers coming together and sold. That story on that corporate thing actually ended from the contractors. It didn't go to the self-help group, but we also then chose Amul. That at least there's more reliance and trust in people's cooperatives than on the market. I think that's where a fundamental difference is. And with farmers aggregating, it's become a huge challenge to the market. For all the rosy pictures that the farm laws painted about equal markets, I think understanding the power, the differences of power of negotiating, a small marginal farmer being able to negotiate with a contractor and not being able to even go to the court, that was at the heart of the debate. How are you going to organize farmers, and how is then, and I think the way that people are thinking is, if we can actually make our farm economies and food sustainability, if they have to be seasonal, diverse, local, around that 100 kilometer areas where we know that large amount of our produce is coming from and sourcing, that's the only way that you connect the urban and the rural consumer market. So all this chota experiments that Nabanita might be doing, or this farm to fork, in Ahmedabad we have many Asli farmers. Seva is organizing farmers. But on the large scale, politically, there's zero voice, at least from the women farmers' point of view, which is the largest smallholders, there is zero voice. Politically, in spite of all these yojanas that are coming through.
But however, collective farming can be a direction. Like there are good examples of collective farming of women collectives in Gujarat, and of course Kudumshi being one of the biggest ones. So women come together and they decide together what they are going to grow, and collectively have the ability to market it and have a say in the price that they get. So it hasn't mobilized it in a manner of cooperatives, but it's a direction a lot of communities, organizations are thinking of collective farming.
Is it right?
Sorry, she already has a mic. If we can get her to.
When you talk of food, doesn't it come down to first the seed? Isn't seed the major problem today? Because that is what governs then everything in terms of the pesticide, what happens to the soil, what happens. And I think somewhere we need to start questioning that, because the quality of food then goes down. I know a lot about cotton farming, but but I would imagine it's the same, It's destroying our lands, and it's the quality of food. So what kind of work goes into, because now that's so completely controlled in some ways, except for.
I think,
So there are 2 or 3 questions. Let's take all of them. And whoever feels like addressing them.
Okay, so I wanted to ask about that organic food. If we talk about, there are very less shops which sell organic food without pesticides or with less pesticides, and they are almost 2 to 4 times more costly than what we find in market. So how can we make organic food or the food without pesticides normalizing? Like how can we work economical for everyone? How can we do that? And the other question was that yes, social media influences our food choices greatly, and we have kind of centralized it. I don't want to be stereotypical, but this is one example that for us, South Indian food is dosa. But 2 days back in UC, in the event, I had authentic Malayali food. So how can we bring that authentic food, everywhere and localize it in restaurants for everyone?
Suggestion here, and then the one at the end. No, I think this person had a hand up. So let us speak first, and then the person at the back after that. And then that should be the last question.
Thank you. I'm Shambhavi. I'm a psychology student. Someone talked about 25% of the food getting wasted after the production. So this year in our youth festival, we had a debate with the food club, and for the longest period of time, the students and even the organizers, as we were focusing on how we are wasting food and what we can do. And then Professor Menglani mentioned that it is not the majority of the food that's getting wasted is not after it comes in the market, but it's before that. So is there anything we can do about it, or we can try to bring a change? Also, one thing my mother tried is that when we buy gehu, and earlier we used to have ghar ghanti, everybody used to have a chakki in their home. So we recently bought a modern version of a chakki, and we are surprised how much atta we are gaining out of just a bowl of gehu, and compared to what we had to go and buy in the market. So is there anything else like this we can do to make sure that the food that is being produced in the market, and so at least we can try our best not to waste it?
Yeah, we have talked in length about individual efforts to minimize, let's say, carbon footprint, but we as the wealthiest section of India right now are constantly falling back into consumerism in terms of our food choices and also the food culture. Like we work longer hours, then we go back home, order from Swiggy. And we order fancier foods like avocado in the name of being vegan and less carbon, in the name of having less carbon footprint. But the avocado comes from Mexico. So most of the times maybe. Okay. Okay, but
because of the demand.
Okay.
So you're talking about the Haas avocados which come from Mexico, and then there are the Haas are the long one and the small one. But anyways, please go ahead.
Okay, so how, as individuals, we convince ourselves that we need to consume more consciously while constantly being in this environment, that we only work for becoming more consumerist. How do you do that?
How do you do that as an individual? Okay.
And as a collective of individuals.
Okay. So how do you sort of change your food consumerist habits? Is what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for the talk. My question was, what would be your take on bringing in diversity in the food? For example, to be more not organic farming. For example, when you have festivals, you have khajur modak, or your smoothie has too many vegetables, so it's like very healthy smoothie. Like, what's your take on the taste and the because we want to be healthy, so you make your food having more ingredient, like even the khakras have chocolate khakra, pizza khakra. So like I'm talking about bringing in diversity in everything that you have. So what's your take on the same?
The seed industry is the battle where it's on in agriculture, on who's controlling it, and therefore there is the way to look at public investments is how do investments go into small and marginal farmers, because all our biodiversity, all the tribal seeds, that is not using where the investments in agriculture are going. They're going in our fertilizer and power. So now what do you do if you're going to get it? Monsanto was sending seeds to us. So what new public investments do we need to make to protect seed savers, to support it, which is why I say, unless you are on the table, you will not be raising that issue. So you need to actually, for me, the only way to deal with very large questions of what kind of agriculture are we supporting and what kind of support it needs. Yeah, but then you, as an urban consumer, will not get to choose. You will get what grain you will get or what vegetable you will get. So unless the urban consumer actually connects much closely, it's not the farmer's struggle, it is your struggle. This understanding of it's not my problem, it's the labor problem or this. I think for the city to be divorced and as a community and a society for us to kind of make these artificial divisions is harmful to us. So my understanding is that whether it's going to be a question of seed or it's going to be a labor's minimum wage or a farm law, it does directly affect you, and to be able to see that connection is important.
Majority of our, as we
said, sorry, I would like to just say why is it expensive or cheap? How can you make it economical for everyone? Because you have to understand why it is expensive and why is it difficult to make it economical. If you don't understand why is it expensive, just to make it because the process is longer and you have to take a lot of care, more human power and materials are used in its production. But how can we make it available for everyone on a larger scale?
When we have policies and investment in that kind of agriculture, majority of our investment goes in fertilizer subsidies that are given to farmers. And if a farmer wants to switch from chemical to organic, he has to go on his own. He, she, they have to, the family has to go on their own. And if you are directly dependent on agriculture for your survival, the 3 years of transition from chemical to organic means reduction in your production, infestations become very high, and that means your income is going to be directly affected. So then the question of, is sustainability affordable for the people who are directly dependent on that, become viable. And so if you want to make it viable for everyone, we need to have policies in place that support farmers when they're going through the transition period. And it's not happening from the policy level top down. Maybe if as consumers we understand and we support farmers and we demand for good organic food. I mean, I've never met anyone who questions that a Gap t-shirt costs 1,500 rupees. You're paying that for a brand, right? And you're all right with that. 1500 rupees to lagenge hi na. Quality and branding and marketing. But food that is essential for your survival, if a tomato costs 20 rupees and you are paying 25 or 30 rupees for organic one, you're appalled, like, oh my God. And so it is about priorities. It is about priorities. What do you give value to at the end of the day? Is it your health? Is it the health of the society? Because it affects the farmers who grow the food as well, and the health of the environment. So they're all interconnected in that sense. So it's our choices, and it's also lack of public investment in that kind of systems, yeah? Does that answer your question?
It's a priority in our choices, but as you said, in the political one, that others make choices for us in certain way.
Sorry?
Others make choices for us.
Right.
What we eat and what we don't. So if we choose to give organic food to others, it is expensive. So, but how can you make affordable? Because like upper middle class and rich people can afford 1,500 rupees kg ghee, but a middle class person can't, because they have to, have a bigger budget for the food, and they don't necessarily.
I completely understand. There are lots of initiatives. There are lots of initiatives like community-supported agriculture, where you help, as a community, you find a group of farmers and then you help them support through the transition period. I think what you're asking for is, where do you find that plug where you can find the sustainability, health, and affordability at one level. And I think it is a struggle at the moment, but it is a lot about asking questions, finding the right people, and there's farmers market in Ahmedabad. There is an organization called Shrishti, which has farmers coming in from all over Gujarat on a Sunday, and they set up a farmers market, and the vegetables there are not expensive. They might be 1 or 2 rupees more expensive than the market value. So organic food might not be available on the shelf at the same affordable price at the moment, but if you look and if you support movements and people and communities, till we are able to change the policy at top and not have corporations control the food that we are eating, ground up is the only way I understand. You're supporting the farmer. Also, like Nabita. Absolutely, and like what her organization does, do a little bit of your own growing, right?
Use the garden in the farm.
Even if you're living in a flat, even if you have a window seal, you can grow a little bit of what you're doing. It's not impossible. So it's also taking a little bit of this.
Sorry, we do have to give up.
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
if answers for the
Yeah.
question.
Actually, if I may.
The next question is on.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I have a sort of a broad answer to 2-3 questions, the same answer to 2-3 questions, including to yours a little bit, in the sense that the question of, whether to, like, how to think about diversity in food, how to think about how to prevent food waste loss through transport, and also the one about seeds. like the quality of the seed. I think that one relatively not necessarily easy, but reachable way that individual consumers can address this. This is not a substitute for policy. This is not a substitute for political action. It's not a substitute for structural change. But as individuals, one thing that we can do is exactly this point of looking at what grows locally, what grows seasonally, and what are native or indigenous seeds to that area. Because all of those things, then have knock-on effects to these things. If it grows nearby, your transport chain is much shorter. If you're importing fruit, or if you're getting it from Kashmir or wherever it is, versus whatever you're getting, if you're getting it in season as opposed to it sitting in godowns for months, it was picked when it was in season. You're just getting it in August. It was still grown in, April or whenever it was. So if you're buying what is grown locally in season, if you are looking for indigenous seeds, generally, indigenous varieties, those seeds are not usually, at the moment at least, they're not being targeted so much. Like, I'm not saying, then you need to know a little bit. Like, you can't just be like, I want rice or I want brinjal. You have to be like, okay, I want that particular rice. I want the brinjal that has the green streaks in it. I want the small, tiny eggplant shaped brinjal, whatever it is. But it does need work. It's not a quick fix solution, but it's something that individuals can at least aim towards. And it also affects the issue of diversity, because then you can think about increasing the diversity in your diet without necessarily having to be like, okay, the diversity is the difference between piri piri fries and chaat masala fries,
The next question was authentic food. How can we have more authentic food is the question.
I am not a good person who believes in authenticity, so like somebody else has to answer. I don't believe in fusion either, but I think that authenticity is like, I feel that food is like language, which flows. So there is a structure, a grammar to it, but like it is like, what is authentic? Like a dosa here is less authentic than say in Bangalore, but then in Bangalore the dosa you are eating, that also is very different from a dosa in say Tamil Nadu, but it's equally authentic there. It's equally authentic another dosa in Delhi, and but I wanted to give more example on the south, because I'm talking about that it can have variation, like language has different dialects. So authentic now, yes, but the divergence from the whole grammar of dosa and making into a pancake dosa, that's a different kind of a thing. But authentic is a very complicated thing. Like now I go to Bangalore very often, and the sambar, say the Udupi sambar is very different from a Tamil sambar, which is very different from a Kerala sambar, Andhra sambar. So authentic is not. Anyway, I am not the person to talk, but I am not in favor of fusion either.
The next one more last question, or shall we?
A quick answer to the last question.
All right, the last question is, how do we change our consumeristic attitude or approach towards food, right? That was your question, yes. How does one change?
Like, use Swiggy as less as possible. Swiggy, Zomato. They are not only creating bad habits, they are killing the food industry, because they take 30% from the restaurant. So like more than 35%, which then if you are paying 100 rupees to Swiggy and they are giving 65 rupees to the restaurant, then how the restaurant will also survive? How will they buy things, and how will they pay for their staff, and how they keep the quality? So reduce this. I am really against Swiggy and Zomato and like all these things. So we can start with one small step, and
keep little bit of cooking possibilities at home. Like in worst cases, you can cook if you can't go out, but reduce this, like this business is like one thing. Second is you gave avocado example, but we can talk about it after this. I have lot of things to say to you.
One small thing.
This is absolutely the last word.
Just
one word.
Just one. Just the Gandhiji's word, be the change you want, you wish to see, because you are thinking somebody else will fix the problem, because Swiggy is there, Zomato is there, work culture will change. You have to educate yourself to be the change, then do something. So not somebody else will do. Everyone is doing their own thing, policy, government, everyone. And of course, you do your part to educate yourself and be the change.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, all of you, for being here today. It was absolutely wonderful to have all of your questions and in the interactions. And as you can see, the subject of food and sustainability is so complex and interconnected, and there are so many permutation combinations that can work or not work. And so to find the absolute one-size-fits-all answer is rather difficult, I think, and it's not something we should aspire to as well. But we would like to continue this conversation through the food lab, through the different projects that the young students plan to carry forward, and we will keep you updated and posted and have conversations like this in future. So thank you very much for coming. Have a lovely evening.